we got to talk about Nebraska. And I hate that we got to talk about Nebraska because they played North Dakota, not the Bison, not North Dakota State, North Dakota. And North Dakota came to Lincoln and gave Nebraska just about all they could handle, and then some. I mean, at one point in the game, it was tied at 7 at half. It was tied at 17 late in the third quarter. Eventually, Nebraska sort of pulled away, caught their mojo, and I think the roster talent ultimately won out for Scott Frost in that program and won the game 38-17. But that final score is deceiving. The same issues that we saw in Ireland for Nebraska against Northwestern persisted against lesser competition, no knock on North Dakota, in this game. I mean, Nebraska's defensive front got pushed around. I mean, I think it was around 100 yards. Yeah, 175 yards on the ground is what they gave up. You can't give up 175 yards to anybody and feel good about your chances winning that football game. Now, again, they got some more production from the offense that ultimately kind of turned on the nitrous and pushed them past in this game, but there's still some very real concerns you got to have if you're Scott Frost in Nebraska. He said all the right things in the postgame and said, hey, it was a weird week, came back from Ireland and we were sick, and he wasn't making excuses, but just sort of explaining, hey, here's a set of circumstances. We got a good football team in that locker room. I told them that. We'd rather figure out our mistakes with a win rather than a loss. And so he said all the right things, but I'm sitting here saying, golly, man, the hard count's pulling for you. We're pulling for you to keep your job. I mean, heck, we picked you to win 7 games. This is not the kind of formula that's going to win you 7 games. I understand they won against North Dakota, but this is not a product on the field right now that's going to get you to that 7-win mark. Giving up that much on the ground and getting absolutely deleted from the frame like they did against Northwestern. It's not going to get it done. And I think if we're talking about Nebraska going forward, I wonder how much the external chatter is going to turn up this coming week in Lincoln. Because you got to think, coming back from Ireland after the loss to Northwestern, I understand that the locker room tries to put on blinders and they try to sort of mute all the outside noise, but there's only so much you can do when you're in a place like Lincoln, Nebraska, who lives and dies by how their Cornhuskers do. It is unavoidable to read the headlines and hear the chatter of, hey, is Scott Frost going to be here? You're looking over your shoulder. If you're Scott Frost saying, are they going to keep me around? All of this uncertainty surrounding your head coach, it just detracts from what's important, and that's the next game. And I wonder how much that played a factor in the psyche of this game. I'm not saying it did. I'm not saying it didn't. I'm just saying I got questions that I think need answers. And this game did nothing to turn that volume knob down at all in these conversations about Scott Frost. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. Now, I like to think that we are a more positive, more of a bright side kind of show, because wherever there's a negative, there's always some sort of positive in there to be found. You want to look at the positives for Nebraska? They found a way to win. They responded. They found a way to win. Like I said, they were tied at half, and the human reaction would have been to say, we're tied with North Dakota. What is going on? You start pointing fingers, you start crumbling internally, and you just sort of take your hands off the wheel and everything goes to the dogs. That wasn't the case for Nebraska. North Dakota pushed them to the third quarter, tied at 17. Nebraska just continued to chip away, continued to dig deep, continued to find a way to get this victory. So I want to make this very clear for Nebraska. There is no such thing as a bad win for this football team. There's such thing as an ugly win, which this absolutely was. But if you're Scott Frost in Nebraska, you are in no position to turn your nose up at W's. I don't care if you're playing FCS West, East, North, South. Does not matter. To win a football game for Scott Frost is a big deal. For this program, it's a big deal. Now, you haven't necessarily validated to yourself who you thought you were in the preseason, but they got a lot of guys in this locker room that weren't there for all the tough things that happened in the previous couple years at Nebraska that still have a lot of confidence about themselves. Casey Thompson being one of them. Trey Palmer being one of them. Anthony Grant, another huge bright side for this program. Another guy with a lot of confidence. He ran like a grown man yesterday, 23 carries, 189 yards, 2 touchdowns. Want to talk about a bright side? That's a bright side. Having a back that can do that, having someone that you can feel like, hey, we got that right, we hit on that. Number 1 JUCO running back in the country. has translated to the college level and he's doing great things for our program, that's a bright side. I was really encouraged to see more of a push up front offensively for Nebraska. Still got issues in the pass pro, and we can sort that out down the road. And I understand it was North Dakota, but again, you're not in position to be picky with your wins here. So a win's a win. Responded to adversity, but I am very curious to see, how does Scott Frost and this program respond to the outside noise? Now, they're no stranger to it, but to have it after a game like North Dakota, it's not a good feeling. A win's a win. Scott Frost and Nebraska press on with Georgia Southern next week. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.